or their spiritual gifts. So each person is kind of different.
Yeah.
And if you go back to see the same skull again another time, you already are a different person, so you'll have totally different experiences with it.
Right. So that's interesting that you're bringing that up. So every experience with this is going to be unique in a way, because there's because of the fact that as you progress and as you have different experiences in your life, you're going to bring new things to that. Now, do you feel now, and also then you're saying that basically the skull itself and the entity that speaks through the skull, or however you want to put that. I mean, I'm probably not being very delicate about it, but the entity that communicates through the skull itself, it obviously is learning as well. Now, do you feel like that? Well, let me ask you this question, because as with most things, do you feel like at some point in time this is a home that they live in 24/7, or is the being inside the skull sort of using it as a way to enter into our dimension, but it's not always there, or is it really sort of a radio device? In other words, when you pick it up, then that person or that entity or that pan-dimensional being knows that they're being taken to that, or in other words, it's sort of like a radio telephone. Is that basically the way you think it is, or do you think it's more like this thing has when it's not being handled, maybe it's dormant?
Right. I think this is a complicated question.
Well, yeah, I would imagine it is, yeah.
Yeah, it is, because number one, I can't say for sure when I say a living consciousness, that's the best way I can approximate what I'm experiencing when I'm making a connection with a crystal skull that has been awakened or seems to be alive. I'm guessing, what is this intelligence? Where is it coming from? It seems to be of a dimensional nature in some way, or spiritual nature in some way. So if that is the case, then maybe it just takes a portion of itself and places it, I don't know if it's inside or around it, or if there's a dimensional door it comes through. But the sensing I get, one sensing I definitely get as I'm looking at the two skulls that are here in the room with me, is that when I'm talking with them, they're fully present. It's like if I was talking to you, Kevin, we're both fully present. We're looking at each other's face and our eyes. We're having a conversation. That's the way I experience the crystal skulls. Now, Bill Holman said about the Mitchell Hedges skull that he senses sometimes that the presence leaves, that it goes off into the world or into another dimension to do something, that it does not affect its positive change in the world just around where it's sitting physically, the locality of it, that it actually can move itself, to go off somewhere else and send healing energies, or even to communicate, because the skulls do this. They talk to each other too, they're like family. Maybe just go off and have a communication with the consciousness in some of the other skulls. The other thing I've also felt is that sometimes when I do my presentations and I can only show people like, a digital image of some of the other important crystal skulls, who's to say that their consciousness or presence could not come through that facsimile or could not work through one of our crystal skulls. In other words, it might feel that it needs to be present. And so the consciousness in one of our skulls says, certainly, I'll step aside if you want to work through in order to help these people, no problem. Because I believe that the collective crystal skull consciousness is to be of service and benefit to humanity. This is its greatest joy. What can we be a catalyst for to help to humanity to awaken to their true divine nature and to learn how to work together and cooperate and help each other?
Right. Well, yeah, I think that's a fascinating thing, and so because of the way that interaction goes, it's interesting that people do have different experiences with it as far as that goes, because it does seem to me like it seems to me like it's if anything, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, Joshua, but if anything, the crystal skull is trying to teach us, or it seems like it to me, is that that we all live in our own uniqueness, and so therefore our reality, as far as the way that we perceive things, the way that we go around our lives, the way that we interact with people, is solely based on our experience, our perception. Now, your wife and you travel all over with your skulls. Now, do you have exactly the same experiences as she does, or do some of those she said that for example that she felt that her friend needed to have a skull that she needed to be passed on, moved on to her. Now that's something that she had an experience with. So does she have sort of, I mean, like my wife and I are very interesting because, we 90% of the time we're on the same page, and then 10% of it is very different. And so, especially when it comes to when we enter into sort of the paranormal world. In other words, her perception of certain things are different than mine. Is that true of you and your wife whenever she's handling skulls from you, or is it pretty much exactly the same story? You don't have to really kind of ask each other how everything's going because you already know. I mean, that's a loaded question, I guess. But what I'm trying to say is that are you experiencing something unique with 90% of the same facts and figures and everything else, or is it where it's 100% what she experienced, I experience, and vice versa?
No, our experiences are completely different and unique, and it's probably because we use different gifts. So we're going to perceive things in different ways. So we don't always agree on what we receive, but this is how creators set it up, for there to be variety, for there to be differences of opinion, different experiences. So no, it doesn't work that way for us. We have different experiences because I think we work with different gifts, and we have a different understanding how things work, in our opinion. So what the Mitchell-headed skull did for me, not the last time I saw it, because that's when we did the tour, but back during the time when the Indiana Jones film came out, is it helped me go into the neutral. So I don't see my job in any way is, like when I'm sharing this different information and I'm really excited about it and I really believe in it, I don't expect that everyone else is going to agree with me. I just see myself as like planting seeds and just let, whatever makes sense to certain people, help them out to continue to explore that if they're interested to do that. And, if it doesn't, Or maybe what might happen is I might bring it up one time and it doesn't kind of resonate, but then they may hear it from another person who will explain it in a different way, and then it will resonate. So it's just kind of like just going with the flow and let everyone be themselves and go in their own path and at their own speed.
Mm-hmm.
All you can do really is you can make suggestions, but, like even if you get a reading from someone, they make suggestions. You have to decide, do I agree with those suggestions? Do I want to do those suggestions? Does it make sense? Oh, that one does. So are you going to take action about it? It's, we all have free will. We all have free choice. And I don't believe there's one way that's better than another. Every path eventually leads back to the same place, which is Creator.
Right. And now let me ask you this question here, because it's something that when you were talking about your novelization of your, well, I mean, and a lot, I mean, as with most people, I mean, and I think especially you write about what you know about, so therefore you do tend to make a character in a lot of ways similar to the type of person you are or would like to be, but with the knowledge that you have. So now we've talked about really kind of most of these different phenomena as far as the crystal skull, the doorway, the Sasquatch. But with UFOs, have you noticed that they're, now let's put it this way. I mean, I'm not necessarily talking about a flying saucer type ship, but have you seen sort of unexplained light phenomenon, like such as orbs or anything else, in conjunction with your skulls, or just as on a trip in Peru where you've seen some sort of mysterious lights or anything like that?
Well, for me, related to UFOs, I have seen lights in the sky dancing around, flashing multicolors. I've seen clouds that with absolute certainty are hiding a UFO because it looks like a UFO. I saw them in Peru, and I saw a lot of UFOs, one on top of another, in Las Vegas because it's close to Area 51. Related to the skulls being present, if it makes any difference or not, one story I can tell, we went to a labyrinth in Wisconsin once, and although I couldn't physically see the orbs, you could with the pictures. I mean, there were like 50 or 60 or 70 of them showing up in the pictures. And so what happened is we took the skulls, we put them into this labyrinth with the orbs, and then we went back where we were staying with our friend, and we noticed that orbs started showing up in the backyard of our friend when we put the skulls out too. So I don't know if the orbs decided to stay with the skulls or travel with them, or what that was about. But I think what happens around the crystal skulls is, there's many spirits also in nature, like nature spirits. Another time I remember we went in North Carolina when we were living in Atlanta before, and I guess it was a different kind of labyrinth there, and there was like this fairy forest, they said, and when I put on the nighttime goggles, I could finally see lights dancing in that forest. Little pinpricks of light were moving up and down and dancing around. So I think that, like, when we introduced the crystal skulls with them, I think they were very delighted. It's the same with the animals too. If you bring crystal skulls around and just let the animals do whatever they want, so all of a sudden they start being kind of like attracted to them. They feel the energy. So there have been UFOs, the same, the holographic images I talked about with Sasquatch. They've also, when you activate like the Mitchell Hedges skull, you'll see UFOs appear in there and aliens appear in there. So another thing which is interesting, and I'm only telling the story just to give a possibility, because